Welcome to Porch Play Chat, sponsored by the American Association for the Child's Right to Play, or more affectionately titled IPA USA. IPA USA is the USA affiliate of the International Play Association, and as part of our efforts to promote play, we've introduced Porch Play Chats. You can find over 200 of them on, if you go to our website at ipausa.org, and up in that top right-hand corner, follow us on Instagram, friend us on Facebook, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and now we're loading them all up into Spotify. And magically, every Monday morning, a new Porch Play Chat will appear in your feed. I'm Deb Lawrence, and I'm president of IPA USA, and with me on the porch today is Heather Bernt Santy. Hi, Heather.
Hey. Hi. That was my Kermit the Frog. Yeah, I'm so excited.
I know, we're so happy you're here. Heather has her master's of education, has been living her commitment to children, their families, and their teachers for 30 years. You're just a baby, just a baby. Yeah. You may know Heather from her work as the host of the popular early care and education podcast, The Early Childhood Nerd. But she also loves her work as a speaker, consultant, writer, and professor. She's held just about every position possible in the field. She was a teacher, a director, a family child care provider, an education director, you name it, she's done it. And you'll find her podcast, link to her podcast in the YouTube description of this Porch Play Chat. And so today we're talking about playing teacher. Woo!
Yeah.
That's a hot topic.
Yeah. So this comes from work I was doing that people have heard about, this schema book that I've been trying to write for 2 years now.
I'm waiting for that schema book.
Yeah, I'm making progress. I just anyway, when I was starting the work, I was looking at what the research that I could find said about what were barriers to people using what I'm calling a free play pedagogy, or just letting children play more, or prioritizing play in early childhood programs. And one of the things that kept coming up was teacher attitudes or practitioner attitudes. And I know I've talked about this on other episodes, but so what came to me was this idea of playing teacher like we used to when we were children, like so many of us did. And that what we do now to identify ourselves as early childhood teachers isn't that much different than kind of the bossy directive pretend play we were doing when we were younger. And one of the questions that comes up so often when I'm talking to people who work with, especially children birth to 5, certainly, into early elementary school too, although they have less flexibility and kind of less agency sometimes for this. One of the things I hear is, well, if I just let them play, then how am I a teacher? And that teacher identity is so connected to our ego. And I don't mean that in a critical way, but just the reality that we have this idea of ourselves, and that's how we sort of decide to value ourselves, or present ourselves to try to get valued by other people.
Yes.
And it, what they're really asking is, if I'm not in charge of everything, and I'm not filling out this cute lesson plan, and I don't have, the bulletin boards and the group time and the outcomes mapped out, and I'm leading it all, then am I really a teacher? And what do I do with my knowledge and my skill and my expertise?
Right. Am I a professional? This is how I think they try to legitimize and be valued as a professional. But that's not what we need to be doing. There's ways to be valued as a professional and demonstrate that when children play, there's so much happening, and you can document forever and ever. And actually show learning happening instead of think learning is happening, right?
Yeah, and I think that bringing the word learning into this is really key, because part of what we do is we shift from, well, first, let me just do my little asterisk that I think children should just play because they're children and they deserve to play and it's their human right, right?
Exactly.
But
Every
we know that
child
we know that
deserves
we
a
need to
childhood.
sell play to
Yes.
people. And we
Yes.
also know that learning happens
Yes.
when they play. So if we can shift from, instead of talking all the time about teaching children, we shift to talking and thinking about how children learn and what they're learning, and put that focus back on, center the child again, what the child is learning. It's not about what I am teaching necessarily. You know what I mean? Like, it's a subtle shift from, I don't have to be in charge of everything. I just have to observe and understand and think about and then support and facilitate what I see children showing me in their play. And that's how I'm a teacher now. I'm using that expertise and that knowledge to let children show me what our priorities should be, instead of saying, well, I've got this set of standards that they gave me that are telling me what my priority should be. Because those standards weren't built by saying, okay, so what's important developmentally speaking for a 3-year-old?
Right.
What, and let's build up. Those standards come from, what kind of a employee do I want at 19? So what kind of graduate do I need at 18? And then
Right.
just backing it up a step every year, instead of saying, this is developmental, this is informed by development.
Yes.
So that's where we need to shift. The standards are there, you can't avoid them, but you can be really, really very creative about how you approach them and understand them and use them.
And you can actually tie their play to
The
more
standards
than,
sometimes, yeah.
45 minutes of play where you're just observing children. You'll go back to your little standard book and go, oh my God, they did 3 social emotional and 2 cognitive and language, and they did a math one, and they did a fine motor one. I
And
mean, it's amazing.
that's what I'm doing in the schema specific chapters of this book, is that there'll be a scenario of a child engaging in schema play, and then there's a breakdown. Here's the math experience they're getting, here's the science experience they're getting, here's the language and literacy, here's the social emotional and the brain development, to kind of model how to use that information.
Right.
I read just the other day, somebody called that photo activism, when you take photos of the children in play and then label it with what standard they're practicing, or using the language of the person you're trying to convince, figuring out what kind of language, and you can do it authentically. We're not tricking anybody.
No.
We're looking for what's real, and that's how we're professional then, right? That's how we're using our knowledge and quote unquote being a teacher. It's
And
not
that's how we're demonstrating the
performing.
effectiveness, right? Versus I'm gonna do this, and that's gonna increase the number of behavior problems I have because children aren't able to
Because
exhibit.
I don't trust children.
Yeah.
And there's gonna be chaos if we're not in control. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I really think it's a dilemma that, with the continued pressure on, early childhood is the answer. That's what we heard in the 90s, right? All the brain research,
We've been
everything.
hearing it for a long time.
Yeah, we've heard it. Early childhood is the answer. But then when the brain stuff came out, people said, oh, they're smarter than we thought they were. So then we need to get rid of childhood.
Yep.
And start teaching them faster and earlier,
right.
which is now destroying the early childhood is the foundation of all future development. So, I think we're in this backward. It's like we take good research and there's different interpretations of it that then create all this harm.
Yeah, we take the headline of the research. And I think this is what, especially with the brain development stuff, that we started to really be able to see and dig into in the 90s. And since and this comes back to our ego and playing teacher. We saw headlines and article titles and blog posts that said birth to 3 or birth to 5, depending on what source, are, the time that there's the fastest brain development, and it's use it or lose it. And we said, Oh my
Oh,
God. Yeah, this will validate us.
yes.
And if this is when the brain development is happening, I can use that language to say, yeah, I'm a real teacher. And that means I should just push more academics down earlier and earlier to take advantage of this brain growth.
Mhm.
But what we should have done is say, see that headline that said, you know,
What
most
we're doing
important
is
time for
working.
brain development, and read and say, what does that mean? How does it, how does the brain develop? What kinds of experiences support that early brain development? And that
Yes,
would have led us to play. And
yes,
then we could have used the research and the play connection to say, I'm a professional and
yes.
this is how I do it, instead
And,
of trying to
and I
say,
don't
oh,
think
what would you see? Okay, I'll be what you see as
I
well.
and I don't think it was just teachers that did that. I think it was
Oh,
policymakers
sure.
and all these other people. And then we
And
get the
funders.
21st century funders, and then we get the 21st century. You know what what's missing, right? Because we did all that in the 90s and took play out of the equation, and then the 21st century employers now are saying, "Oh my God, I need somebody who can get along with other people." And take some initiative
Yeah.
and um you know be be someone who can run with an idea and someone who's creative. I
And can
That's
be
what I'm looking
collaborative with other people. Yeah.
for. And I'm
Yeah.
like, well, but you took all the play out of.
That's right. We didn't let anybody have those experiences. It's very much like the early childhood teacher who sees a child using scissors in a way they don't like. And so they take the scissors away. They say, you can't use these. I'm going to put them back in the cupboard.
Mhm.
And so that child never gets practice using scissors, if that's a thing we're going to value. And then we're like, oh, kids don't know how to cut when they get to kindergarten.
Yeah.
Well, it's because you took away all their practice. You took away
Exactly.
all the ways the brain is set up to figure that kind of stuff out in the body. Same thing with these 21st century skills or whatever.
Yeah, we took them all away.
Early and earlier, we're taking away opportunities to practice in the name of teaching and being teachers and being
Mhm.
professional, a profession. Um, and it's not working for anybody except the people who sell curriculum.
Right, an assessment system.
Uh-huh.
And if you and and it just is insane the amount of money. I mean, not only are they paying for all these curriculum or assessment systems when all they need to do is have a digital camera or
Mhm.
an iPad to take photos and be able to document,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It's it it is teachers never get paid enough, whether you're in primary grades, middle, high school, or early childhood, because the latest curriculum has come to the principal or superintendent and said, this will do it. This
Mhm.
will increase your reading score. So they spend this horrendous amount of money that could have been spent letting teachers do what they were trained to do,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
and pay them more.
Yeah. And so I was just talking to someone else kind of along those lines, recording an episode of my podcast. And we had been talking about the NACI Code of Ethics,
Mhm.
and that very first piece being, above all,
Do
we
no
do no
harm.
harm, and we're not going to engage in practices that are, and then a list of adjectives.
Mhm.
And one of the things that it says there, we're not going to engage in practices that are exploitative of children. And
Mhm.
I think this focus on having to buy curriculum packages and
Mhm.
people seeing that as an opportunity for profit, regardless of its real impact on young children, and regardless of whether it really fits how young children are showing us they need to learn, that's exploiting children.
It is.
And this idea that I need to be in charge to support my idea and identity of myself as a teacher is also me meeting my needs on the backs of these young children, which is also exploitative. And I know that's going to be harsh, and
Mhm.
some people are probably going to be mad about that. But I think if I'm performing teachery things for my need to be seen as a professional. And I've been that teacher. I want to say that too. I've
Right.
been that person who did those things because I enjoyed playing school and I had a need to be seen in a certain way. We're we're using children to meet a need that we have, um, unconsciously, probably, subconsciously, probably.
Oh, absolutely.
It's an
You don't,
implicit thing that we need to make explicit by talking and wondering about it.
yes. I mean, I lined up all my teddy bears, all my dollies, right?
Yeah,
And
same.
please know that my childhood was nothing but play.
Right.
I
Me too.
played for, 14 hours a day. I played.
Yeah.
I played.
Yeah.
Nobody told me where to go, what to do,
Yeah.
how long to stay there. I played. But it was really interesting. I don't know where the lining all my little dollies up when I was 4
Yeah.
and pretending like I had a chalkboard and
Yeah.
having them all sit. I don't know where that came from.
Yeah.
I,
That's
I just,
interesting
yeah,
because
because I played
yeah.
all the time.
Yeah, because so often I hear, and this is probably me too earlier in my career, but I hear people say, I just love to be a teacher. I've always felt called to be a teacher. I played school when I was a kid and I took that as my calling to be a teacher.
Mhm.
And I don't want to take anything away from that beautiful memory and idea, but I do want to maybe just offer an opportunity to wonder because I've done this myself.
Mhm.
Um, or were you just engaging in pretend play with props that were familiar and available to
Yes.
you and a role that you had seen? And so now you telling the story about being 4 and not knowing where that came from just
Mhm.
adds a different layer of that wondering for
And
me.
I wonder if it was, Sunday school,
TV or a
right?
book, yeah, Sunday
Could have
school.
been something I saw on TV
Yeah,
that I was imitating. But
yeah,
oh my goodness, but nobody told me what to teach and
right,
nobody told me which dollies to put
right.
in the row and no
Yeah,
one told me.
I
So
love it when kids play teacher, but it
oh
is like
yeah,
showing you a lot about yourself when you watch how bossy they are when they play
you
teacher.
know, did I really? Was that the tone of voice I used? Yeah, yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah. During teaching, I would go, perhaps I should reflect on that because they seem to be imitating
Yeah,
me. That
exactly.
wasn't good.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, they're playing with power too, just like other kinds of power play. Playing
Yeah.
teacher when you're little is engaging with ideas about power. So it's not all a direct reflection of the adults in their space.
I know
But
there were some words
we could
there.
wonder.
Yeah. There were some words there that sounded really familiar.
Yeah. Yeah.
None of us were ever the perfect teacher. I mean,
Right.
life
No.
happens, right? You're crazy and you're busy and you have all these things coming. But to be the teacher you always wanted
Mm,
and to be able to describe those
yeah.
attributes or characteristics of the teacher you always wanted, or to help you identify your favorite teacher. And I do that in my college classroom all the time when we get to a certain part of curriculum in a certain class.
Uh,
And I'll say, what did you love about that teacher? And they'll list all the wonderful things that we should all be doing with children.
Yeah.
And I'll say, now think of a teacher where
Yeah.
you didn't feel successful and you really didn't want to go to class. And what was that like? And they list lots of things, right? And then I'll say, which teacher will you be,
Mhm.
right? Which one will you model?
Yeah.
And how then will you build those positive relationships, give children some autonomy,
Yeah.
allow them to make choices
Yeah.
within their environment. And then in the very foundation course, one of the things I do, because I know this is really hard, right? And we got to start early with them to get them to recognize. I'll say, why do you want to be a teacher? Right. In
Hmm.
one of the very first classes they take. And they'll say, oh, I've always loved children
Yeah.
and I've always wanted to be a teacher and I had a favorite teacher and all of this. And so then I'll say, well, tell me about that favorite teacher. Oh, well, we did this and this and this and this and this.
Mhm.
And oh, I love celebrating holidays.
Yep.
And I can't wait to do all those little crafty things, right? And so they get through with their list, and I've written everything down on the whiteboard, and I look at them and I'll say, let me show you what isn't being an effective teacher. And I cross out the holidays and all
Uh-huh.
stuff, and I cross out the having a big circle time and all the large group activities. And they look at me, I said, because that's not what children need. They don't need that stuff. Let's go back over here to the building
Mhm.
relationships and stuff that you put over here.
Right.
And that's a big aha moment
Yeah.
for them.
I think that's so important that you make that explicit for
Uh-huh.
them, because it reminds me of two things. There's an article that I read, I think it was in the early 90s, and it was in Young Children. So I know it's old. And I haven't seen any kind of research that builds on or challenges it since then. Um, but the article discusses kind of a project that they did. To their finding was, it'd be easier if I just started with their finding was, but their finding was that even when early childhood teachers have really sound instruction in developmentally appropriate practices, which is a phrase I'm trying not to use anymore, but that's what the article uses here.
Okay.
Um,
Developmentally effective. Think of that.
yeah, I like, or
I'm
responsive
saying
or
it.
informed. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But even when they have really sound kind of coursework or practitioner prep in that, when they
Mhm.
actually get in the classroom, they were reverting to their school memories,
Yes.
which usually is them at a much older age than they're actually working with.
Mhm.
And so to in your classes or whatever, to make that really explicit is
Mhm.
important. Um,
Well, the other thing, I don't know if we've had a porch play chat since this happened to me this last spring,
uh-huh.
but I, we, in methods, we talk about how are you going to provide opportunities for children to explore manipulatives to build their math cognition skills and their fine motor skills and their social emotional skills, all
Because
the
it's
things,
all connected, right?
all
Yeah.
connected, right? And then language and literacy has been the nightmare. I mean, they get all the other stuff, right?
Yeah.
So I finally said this last spring, okay, we're going to go through the standards for pre-kindergarten, so 3 to 5s. And I'm going to give you these 2 pages and you these 2 pages, and they work in groups. And I say, I want you to find me anything that talks about letters,
Yeah.
anything that
Yeah.
talks about letters, any standard that you see that talks about letters. And then we're going to write them up on the board, and then we're going to look at them. And so they go, I mean, they're diligent. Oh, I'm going to go find all these things that talk about letters
Yeah.
because all I see is
Because they
letters.
think it's in there.
They
They
think it's in
assume it's
there.
in there. Yeah.
And then they'll say, okay, I think I may have found one. And I said, okay, which one? So we go and look at it. And I said, nope, look, that doesn't, no, it says, can children distinguish between letters and numbers? It doesn't say they need to know, 26 upper and lowercase letters. And they go, oh. And then, when it gets to one about their name, they should be able to recognize a couple of letters in their name as they get closer to going to kindergarten. And they'll go, well, here, this one.
Yeah.
And and so then, okay, so we do that. It was like 30 minutes of an hour and a half class where we're really looking at what the standards say.
Uh-huh.
And then they do a play experience that is offered as a provocation for children, and they turn it in. All letters.
Yeah, yeah, that's been my experience too. Not necessarily with that format, but in we have a class, so one of our classes is called the cognitive curriculum.
Mhm.
And it's specifically supposed to be math and science focused, like uh strategies and techniques and things. Of course, I spin it a lot. But that's the core, and we hit the core things. But and then they're supposed to be throughout the semester observing children, and they choose something that they observed in the children, and an interest, and then they're supposed to develop an activity based on that interest that uh,
That they'll offer.
that they'll offer. Um, And in the class, we talk, we're not even talking about letters and stuff, but we talk about, getting beyond shapes, colors, letters, numbers, and really thinking about these deeper ways of learning and deeper developmental priorities that fit the math category or that fit the science category, whatever. But at least half of the assignments that come in are skill and drill or letter focused, even though that's not what we were doing. It's not even a literacy specific thing, and it's because it's so familiar. It's so
familiar, and it's their
ingrained.
experience, right? It's what they
Yeah.
so
And it's
after
easier
that
to
happens,
measure.
yeah.
Right?
And after that happens, I walk in the door the next Tuesday with this class, and I'll say, "What just happened?" and because they didn't get good scores, right? Because they didn't. None of it was developmentally effective.
Yeah.
And they're really upset about not getting a good score. And I said, "What happened?"
Yeah.
And I say, "Talk at your tables and figure out what happened." And so then they'll say, "Well, I think this happened, and I think this happened, and I think this happened." And I said, "Yeah, and that's what you have to fight against, because your
That's
experience."
another element of being a professional teacher using your expertise, is fighting against those sort of assumptions
Yes.
about children and their learning.
And so so it is. People can list for me all the things how do children learn? Oh, they learn through play. They learn by socializing with other people, and they learn by all this stuff. And that, what do they need to know before they go to kindergarten? Well, they need to have good, strong social emotional skills, and they need
to know how to wipe their butts.
Yes, and be able to have body self-care, and they need to be able to do all the good stuff, right?
Yeah.
Then we look at their daily schedule, and I say, you told me that where is it in these things? Because it's so deeply embedded.
They're playing teacher. They're using old scripts that don't really serve children.
Yeah, so I think that's an article we need to write.
Okay. I have all kinds of time to write.
Yeah, how to de-script what you experieed and be a more effective teacher. And because
let's write that article together.
Yes, we should. Because I think that's a real struggle.
Yeah, for sure.
For people.
And I think it's important to just say again, I don't think anyone is like waking up in the morning, rubbing their hands together saying, how can I ignore development today?
Right, exactly.
But it's because it's embedded already in our experience.
Deeply embedded. Yeah. It's way deep in your brain because you experience those things in a variety of ages. And so it has to be a reflection, some time to reflect. Every day when I leave the college classroom and I'm driving home, I say, okay, what went well today? What could I do better on Thursday? Right? That activity worked really well. I need to make sure I do that again. And so I'm reflective of whatever space those 4 classes had during that day. And they're not all the same class. So I teach different classes, 4 of them in a row. And so it's a opportunity for me to reflect. And I walk in the door and Chris will say, how was school? And I'll go, it was awesome. Or I'll walk in the door and said, I sucked today. It is that reflective piece that I think people need to be asking themselves. When were children, when did I have the least amount of behavior problems? When were children, when did I hear children being joyful and excited? And how can I get more of that? Right. So it is that reflection of what went well and what you might want to try different tomorrow that I think will help people de-script. But if they can just walk into their profession, recognizing that the purpose of early childhood is to protect childhood, right? Instead of try to make them first graders.
Right. Well, so this kind of goes back to that code of conduct again, because I think it's in the code. It's definitely in the position statement for DAP from NACI that we recognize that early childhood is a unique period of life to be respected, or whatever. I'm paraphrasing, of course, but our practices don't. Our
Always.
practices are all, this period of life only matters for what we can get out of it in the next period of life.
Yes.
And
Yeah,
the next, and the
we
next.
have to stop getting them ready.
Yes.
So for those of you who are listening, Jennifer McCarville just did a Porch Play Chat. So you're going to want to listen to hers, because her title was Be Ready. And it was for the teacher to be ready.
Nice. Yes.
Not for children.
Right.
To be ready. For the teacher to be ready for what's going to take place, and how they can support, and how they can deepen their relationships, and how they can offer scaffolding opportunities if the child is, if that's where the child is moving. It was a beautiful Porch Play Chat about just be ready.
Yeah.
And
I use these Porch Play Chats in class so much with my students. So I'm like, I got to get this one on the list.
Got to find that one. Yeah. The other one to find is the town hall that Jennifer McCarville did on orality. Oh my God, that was the most amazing language and literacy one ever.
Yeah.
It was incredible.
That sounds great. I mean, one of my many issues with readiness, in addition to it just being sort of disrespectful of who they are right now today, and their humanity and their rights, is that none of us really know what that's supposed to mean. We all assume we do, but like, to use Indiana as an example, we have early learning standards, and for each, element of the different content area, there's a little chart. It's like younger infant, younger toddler, older toddler, younger preschool, older preschool, and then there's a kindergarten column. And the kindergarten column shows what children are going to be expected to do by the end of kindergarten. And for us, like, letter recognition and knowing them all is at the end of kindergarten, according to the standard. But so many of the screening tools that the elementary schools use expect it before they get there.
Yeah.
So we're also complicit in this, using the language without asking the questions.
Or challenging what people are saying.
Or saying no.
Yeah. Just what we would do with the licensing inspector, who I loved. I loved all my licensing inspectors who would come in and say, I'm going to write you up for this. And I'd say, where is that in the regulations?
Yeah.
I don't remember that one.
Yeah.
And so I said, can you show me? Right. And she would go through her regulations and go through her regulations and go, and she would say, I can't find it.
Yeah. Yes. I
said, I know.
Yeah.
Because it's not there.
Yeah.
And so, we have to do the same thing with when people expect us to do something that is developmentally ineffective for kids, or not aligned with where this little 3-year-old is versus where this little 3-year-old is. Right. Then we need to say, can you show me where it says we should be doing that for this age group of child? Because I don't see where that should happen, right? And I think that really helps to get people to go, oh yeah, you're right. It doesn't say that. I didn't know.
Yeah.
And so that, I think that's one of the strategies that we can use to help others, because other people have had the same experience as you did, right? So they still have the same script in their head that what should be happening. And so sometimes we have to just ask the question, can you show me what that is? Because that's not the way I interpreted it.
Yeah.
So can you show me what you mean by that and where it says that here?
And there we're using our professional expertise.
There we go. And they'll go, oh, why did I think it was in here?
Yeah.
And so then maybe we can begin to push
Mhm.
in a gentle and kind way, unless you've tried that and it didn't work, then you need to be more forceful.
Yeah.
Nobody is going to be losing their job right now.
I know, that's what I keep saying.
No
I mean,
one.
unless there's like really just
Yeah,
active,
unless you're being egregious and harming children,
yes,
right?
yeah.
So, yeah. Anyway, Heather, this has been amazing. We could talk for
I know.
100 hours on all of this
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah,
I'm going to send you stuff about the conference if you'll send it out to all your peeps.
sure. Yeah.
Awesome. I'll do that this
Conference.
afternoon.
Cool.
So stay right there while I close this out. To learn more about IPA USA, please visit our website at ipausa.org. And until next time, keep on playing.